Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fighter Pilot's Guide to Living. I'm Beth Bailey here with my co-host Mitch Taco Parmentier, and today we're so excited to bring on Captain Roe Skid Massey. Here's a little bit about Roe's background. He graduated high school at Gallatin High School in 1975 and then graduated MTSU with a degree in aerospace administration. He completed naval flight training and was selected for F-14 Tomcats in Virginia Beach, Virginia. As a junior officer, Roe was an F-14 instructor, carrier qualification phase leader, and a graduate of the Naval Fighter Weapons School, Top Gun. He served as CVW-17 Landing Signals Officer, LSO, followed by ComNav Airland, LSO. He received his master's degree in International Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College, and following his tour as commanding officer of 2 F-14 squadrons, he was assigned as the head aviation officer detailer in Memphis, Tennessee, responsible for the duty assignments of approximately 13,000 naval aviation officers. After promotion to captain, he was selected for Carrier Air Wing Commander 17, located in Virginia Beach, flying the F-14 Tomcat and F-18 Hornet, and was responsible for 10 squadrons, approximately 80 aircraft, and 1,800 personnel. Following his tour as Carrier Air Wing Commander in Virginia Beach, Virginia, he was subsequently assigned a second duty assignment as Carrier Wing Commander 9 in Lemoore, California. Roe has flown over 4,500 hours in fighter aircraft, has been on 8 extended deployments, and achieved over 1,300 carrier-arrested landings. He's married to Ruth Martindale Massey of Murfreesboro, and they have 2 wonderful children, Will and Ryan, and 4 beautiful grandchildren. All of those things are just excellent achievements. Roe, it's so good to have you here, and I mean your entire resume is just so impressive. It's so great to have you.
Well, thanks. And there are guys that have far better resumes than mine, did a lot cooler things than I did. So that's just kind of par for the course for our group. For any fighter pilot, they're going to do pretty cool things. So
it's so true. That's why we're talking to y'all.
Absolutely.
It's so great. Yeah, it just thanks so much for taking the time.
Skid, so when you kind of set out on this tour and decided to join the Navy, so you did AOCS. Can you tell us a little bit about the thought process of what got you into the Navy? And then as you were joining and going through AOCS, what were your hopes for aviation and what you were going to do?
Well, when I went to AOCS, I had been flying, and I started flying at a young age, 12 years old. And so I was on campus, and I just, by sheer chance, I took the recruiter's test. Didn't think anything about it. And about 3 months later, I get this call, said, "Hey, do you want to go to flight school?" And I'm like, "Sure." And when I decided that I was going to go to flight school, I said, "Well, if I go to flight school, I want to fly the F-14. I want to fly the Tomcat," because, of course, that was the coolest thing there. So got a commission, and went to flight school. Did T-34s in Milton, Florida, and I kind of got accelerated through the program because I had so many flight hours, so they would combine. So I went through VT7 at a fairly fast rate. It didn't do me any good because when I got up to Meridian to fly jets, I had to wait for basically the rest of my class to show up. So I went to Meridian and started flying the T2 and the A4. And by the time, even though I had really 1,000 hours before then, by the time everybody got to jets, we're all the same. So it ended up working out pretty well. So
nice. Yeah, I've definitely heard that before, where you may have a leg up as a guy with some civilian flight time, but obviously military flying is completely different. So that initial phase, but then once you get to jets, everybody's learning how to do ACM or
exactly. Yeah, there were some guys in my initial class that had never even touched an airplane, and so by the time we get through training and get our wings, everybody's the same. So
That's really cool. Well, when we talked before recording, and you mentioned that when you got to Oceana, my dad, Wheels, was working with you in the simulator, I knew I had to ask you about it. So, what kinds of things did he teach you when you were first flying the Tomcat? And do you have any cool Wheels stories?
Yeah, when we get to the sim, and at that time, all the instructors were the sim instructors. We didn't have contract guys. So if there was active duty guys, and then they would give it to Sims, and Wheels was there, and obviously focused on the Rio side of the house. So he was as I said in my note, he was the font of all knowledge Rio related. I mean, he was very patient. He instructed on a term that everybody could understand, and it was really nice to get him as an instructor, because we would go through the sim as a team. The Rios, they would do some by themselves, the pilots would go do, and then when we started getting paired together and working as a unit, so to speak, he was really good. So, and I think because of that, and especially when I became a instructor, I wanted to make sure I knew the back seat just as good as I did the front seat, because where the switches are, what do you do, how do you manipulate the back seat, and going through as a student having Wheels there was a great benefit to that. So he was a great guy, always around. He was at the club. He'd come to the squadrons. I mean, he was a great guy.
I told him you said that too today, so he was very grateful to hear that actually.
So yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Uh, all right, so Skid, you get Tomcats, which is what you wanted, right? And
Yep.
first fleet tour, go to VF-103, the Sluggers back at that point, right?
Yep.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about that first cruise. And nothing really happened, so I think this will be quick. But no,
Yeah.
you obviously had a
Well, it was
Oh
interesting
gosh.
getting to the squadron, because when VF 103, the prior crews for 103, they were in the F4 Phantom. So it was myself, Will Curvon, uh, John Cahill, who was a F-14 instructor. He was a senior guy. He was like a super JO. Um, we had finished the rag, got to the squadron, and the rest of the squadron was actually still going through transition. So it was a bunch of F4 holdovers that were on the verge of being dangerous, because they really didn't understand the system. They would say, "We did it this way in the F4. This is how you do it." It's like, no, you got to run OBC, you got to run all the tests, you got to do all this stuff before you go flying, or the airplane's gonna, you know, ruin itself. So that was a learning curve. But once we got the whole squadron together, we pretty much went into workups right off the bat. So it was, welcome to the squadron. We're going to go to workups and go on cruise. The first deployment was just a vanilla. We spent literally more time in port than we did at sea. We would go from one port, do a CQ period, go to the next port, and I think our longest at sea period was 11 days, and
wow.
and that was the translat. Um, but in that time, we really got a lot of traps, because every time we pulled out, we would just do, day night CQ and just pound out the traps. So that was a good thing. So,
Sounds like a lot of keeping up foreign relations in different ports. That sounds
oh yeah,
tough.
yeah. And back in those days, that's what you did. You hit
Yeah,
every port in the Med. So
that's
it was
awesome.
it was it was kind of cool. So,
What was your favorite port in the Med?
boy, uh, I think that we did a lot of Naples.
Hmm.
Um, Back then, we did a lot of ports in Spain. We did Israel. But as far as picking one out, maybe Palma was really nice. So
That's awesome. I won't ask you for any port call stories. This is a
good.
friendly
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
So it was the second deployment then, right? So you guys are out. And can you tell us a little bit about the Achille Lauro, kind of that incident, if you don't mind, just kind of painting the story of what happened, and then tell us about kind of your part.
Sure. Second deployment, it's we in chop into the Med. We're in the Med and this was planned. We were going to be in the Med for about 2 months, and then we're going to chop to the IO, to the Indian Ocean, and spend the bulk of that time about 6.5 to 7 months in the IO. So we were scheduled for an 8-month deployment, and it gets extended like most of them do, even today.
Yep.
So we're in the Med first couple of months, and it is, I think, on 7 October is when we get the word that the Italian cruise ship Achille Lauro was hijacked. And so we had been following the ship around. We'd been taking tarp pictures of it, trying to keep track of where it was, and it was kind of going all over the southern Med and up in the eastern, up towards Syria. And then we get the word that it is pulling into Port Said. So we didn't think much about it, even though we had been doing some planning on what we would do if the SEALs wanted to go aboard. We were kind of ready for that. And at that time, we deployed with SEALs on board the ship. So they were kind of gearing up for that. But the ship pulls in, and we were on our way to go to a scheduled port visit in Dubrovnik. So we didn't think anything else about it. We just kind of dropped that, heading on to port. And that's when, on the 10th of October, 1985, in the middle of the night, I'm in the back of the ready room compiling the squadron landing grades. Is over the 1MC, the ship's announcing system, comes up to launch the alert E2, which technically, I guess we were in alert 60, but I don't know that anybody was designated as the alert 60 crew, which was not uncommon. And so I just happened to run to the paraloft, get my gear on, and run up to the flight deck and figure out what airplane was in the alert status, and climbed in. Shortly thereafter, Doc Plouts was my normal Rio. He shows up and gets in, and the yellow shirts are come running up to us to give the signal to start up, and we think it's a drill. So we go through, yeah, okay, we're going to start up and get alignment and get everything ready to go. And then they start pushing us back because we were nose into the island. So they start pushing us back, and we're talking and said, yeah, we'll probably get to the CAT and shut down because this is a drill. And about the time that we were getting pushed out, the E2 launches. So it's like, okay, so we'll just do an airborne respot. But we end up launching, dark night, no moon, and right off the bat, Combat, who was our former CEO in VF-103, Sam Montgomery, comes up and starts giving us direction to go midnight, turn all our lights off, and gives us a CAPT station to go orbit. And we had a tanker coming our way. So that was unusual, thinking that we're getting airborne and we're already tanking. And so we tank, we top off, and so the night progresses. We get assigned a cap station further down, really close to Libya. We get directed north, and we tank a couple more times in there, and then get a contact call, and Doc and I go intercept this unknown. And it's at probably 30,000 feet, doing about 0.9. And Doc is running the show from the back seat, and we join up on something that I didn't think was there. And Doc is like, you got to give me 10 more knots of closure and climb a little bit. So I'm just kind of inching forward, and the back of my neck, the hair on the back of my neck starts standing up, and I just happened to look up, and I'm between the two left engine on a C-141. And it just scares the bejesus out of me. So I unload, I go negative G to get away from it, and then go through the whole process of joining back up, ID in the airplane, and passing that to the ship. And who said, hey, it's a U.S. Air Force C-141, this heading at this speed, and they just say, break it off. And that was it. So we break it off from that intercept. I don't know if we hit the tanker again or not, but then we get called to join another contact. Same thing. Getting vectors on it, no lights, join up. And as I get close to this one, I can hear the prop that's a C-130. So we pass that. It's a U.S. Air Force C-130, lights out, dark, paint job. Again, break it off. And as bits and pieces are coming in over the radio and from the E2 about airplanes that they're looking for, we think that we're looking for a hijacked airliner. So after we break it off from the C-130, we get a call to intercept on a contact coming out from the Egypt area. And so we get a contact on it way out there, dark night. I can see it. It's lit up like a Christmas tree coming at us. So that intercept was piece of cake. I mean, we just your normal everyday stern conversion rendezvous and join on the guy. So we join on him. We pass the ship that it's a Italian or Egypt Airlines 737, and we end up IDing it. Doc pulled his flashlight out and scans over the airplane, and I kind of talk him onto it because I saw it. I said, "Stop, stop, stop, down, come right," and he shines his flashlight across the registration number of the 737. We pass that to the ship, and they say, "That's it, stay tight on." So we go arcing around, and from what the E2 is passing, that the airliner was calling different countries to try to land. Tunisia denied them landing rights. They were going to go up and try to land, I think, in Malta. We flew over Malta. We flew over all kinds of different countries. And they were going to go, I think, into Morocco. They got denied. And after arcing around for quite a while, they end up heading back toward Egypt, and they were going to go, I think, back to Cairo. So there was some discussion on what to do. We were normally loaded out back then. In those days, we flew live missiles every single sortie, and so the airliner steadied up, headed back toward Egypt, and so we just pulled out in front of him after we were told to pull up beside him and turn our lights on, let him know that we were there. And I told you before that when I did, the pilot, I was close enough you could see his eyes get big, and then the co-pilot leans over and looks at us, and then the flight attendants come up and peek at us, and so we move away a little bit, and as he steadied up, I start turning into him just to get him to turn to go back to Sigonella, is where the E2 Ralph Zio was directing him to go. So we start heading to Sig, and he wants to. He was initially going to try to land up in Catania, which is the civilian airfield just north of Sig. And as we're coming there, he said, "No, you're going to go to Sigonella." And Sigonella came up and said that the field is closed. It's outside of operating time. So Doc immediately comes up and says, "We're declaring emergency. We're emergency fuel." And so they open the airport, they turn the runway lights on, and we're now going to SIG. I didn't tell you before, but as where we are, we're northeast of the field, and he's starting to make a big rapid descent, and everybody's screaming at him because he didn't want to go fly into Mount Etna, the smoking volcano up there. So he starts making a big sweeping turn to the south. He's too high to land heading west, so he makes a big sweeping turn to the south of the field to land heading to the east. And as he was doing that, I'm still tucked in there, and I had to throw my flaps and gear, and I had my hook, I had my probe out, I had everything out to try to slow the airplane down, and I'm cross-controlling it. And as he's swinging around, making his turn to final, he's got about 90 degrees to go, 1,500 feet. We've got a sink rate going of like 2,000 feet a minute, and I'm like, he is going to crash. After hours of flying on his wing, I'm going to watch this big fireball. So I roll away from him to get out of the fireball. And as I look back at him, he rolls wings level and immediately touches down and rolls out. And I'm kind of flying along beside him at a couple of 100 feet, watching him roll out. And as I watch him, the controllers just come unglued that they had two airplanes land, no lights, no clearance, and it was the 141s that I'd intercepted. There were two of them that landed, followed by the C-130, and that was the Delta and SEALs Delta team to take the terrorists. So once they landed, we head back to the ship, and because I'd overspent all of my flaps and gear and everything, I couldn't get those up. I had to get gas, so I had to tank dirty, which was, at the end of a long flight, wasn't the most pleasant thing in the world because I'd never done it before. I don't know that anybody had. So tank dirty, limped back to the ship, and had to wait for the rest of the recovery because I was stiff wing, and I would have been stuck in the landing area. So come back, land aboard the ship, go into Civic to debrief what happened, and we really didn't know what happened because we didn't know, what we were doing because there was zero brief, and we were kind of debriefed after the fact once we get into Civic, and then we find out what we did. So it was a long night, interesting evolution, and it was the success of the entire team. And I'll tell you that anybody in the squadron could have done what I did. It was not heroic feats of skill. It was good training. The team came together, and everything just worked out well because it wasn't that hard, really. It was just a long, grueling night. So
You said that was like a 6.5 hour mission, right? You landed at like 2:30 or something in the morning.
yeah, it was about 6 hours, 6.5 hours, something like that. Landed early in the morning because the whole evolution started at the end of a flying day. And it was a long night, followed by a long debrief, talking to everybody. The admiral was there, different intel people were there. So by the time we finished debriefing with the ship, debriefing with everybody, it was probably 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning before we were able to get in the rack. So.
And
That's
after
wild.
that, you had to do a press call. Is that what I remember that you were asked to go
Yeah.
to? Can you talk
So,
about that too?
because we were running around the Med all night long, the ship was trying to keep close to us. So when we did recover, we didn't have to fly across the Med again. So they were out of position. So it took an extra day to get into port. So that day before port, we did a televised conference, not a conference, but an interview on the ship with the admiral, and did a lot of stuff that I don't know where that ended up. And so then the following day, we pulled into port, and the admiral, Jeremiah, Doc, myself, and I think one other person flew from Dubrovnik. We went up to London. That was going to be a press conference up there. So when we landed in London, the State Department was there to give us a briefing guide on what we could cover, what we couldn't cover. Three-ring binder full of stuff, full of pictures, full of press releases from all over the world that they'd compiled already. So we got a brief there, and then whisked to our hotel. And I didn't tell you this earlier, but it was like a James Bond movie. We were assigned bodyguards. There was about 8 cars, and we were all in different cars and moving positions all over as we're driving through London at about 80 miles an hour
Wow.
to get to the hotel. The hotel, they had cleaned out a wing for us. So we had guys stationed all over the hotel for us. And then the next day, we went to the embassy to where the conference was going to be, and then that morning we find out that the conference had been canceled for security. So
It's just amazing. I mean, and I've just, 6 hours in the air. And did you make that connection at all at that time that, hey, we were just Overwatch on, the Achille Lauro, and could this, I mean, it's almost like, why would that happen? Why would
Right.
this be linked to that? Is that kind of, you didn't even link it at
yeah,
all?
we never linked it.
Yeah,
We never linked it because we didn't know. We had no idea, and information on the ship in those days was, I mean, it was days old.
sure.
So we had no idea that
Wow.
the terrorists had gotten off the ship, had gotten into Egypt, and then had an airplane made available for them to fly out of the country. I mean, it didn't make sense because we thought the airline itself had been hijacked.
Yeah.
So there was between us, there was no correlation whatsoever that this had been dreamed up back at the State Department in the U.S.
Hmm.
And even though the Delta team knew what they were doing, they never included us on that plan, or I guess we just fell in on the execution of it and made it happen. So it worked out well in the end. So
Yeah. You said yesterday too that, you guys had counted the number of tried to figure out how many people could have been aboard the plane and that uh, was anyone aboard that plane other than the stewardesses when they
well, and,
hijacked
and
it?
that's a good point because Doc and I we were flying beside him for quite a while before they told us to take a position and let him know that he was being escorted. So while we were there, we were thinking, okay, so if one of the airplane curtains, window shade was down, we figured somebody was behind that. So between counting people that we could visibly see and the windows that were down, we knew there were 7 people on board. We could count 7 bodies, but because the window shades, we figured that okay, for those we would say so somewhere between 7 and 15, seven live bodies that we could see, 15 possibly if they were behind window shaded seats. So.
And through this whole thing, the E2 is the one leading the conversation with the 737, right? You're just using the plane to kind of nudge along and flag
Yeah.
good form.
Yep.
Wow.
So the E2 is driving the show. He's talking to the airliner on VHF. We are on UHF radios, so we never said anything directly to the airliner.
Hmm.
And if we did, and if he said anything to us, we couldn't hear it because we're on 2 separate wavelengths.
Right.
And then at the last few minutes of that night, and the E2 must have gone to relay where we could finally hear what he's saying to everybody. But at that point, it didn't matter.
Right.
But so when we got the 737 aimed towards SIG, it was just for the stroke of me acting like I'm going to turn into him, and he turns to avoid me. So it ended up working out pretty well. So.
It's crazy.
It's just amazing. When Bad Fred told the story, he only talked about the intercept portion. And so I remember hearing it and thinking, oh my, what? And it's incredible to know all that went into that. I can't even imagine. And then, after this, you ended up with a 3-year tour with the RAG with VF-101. I guess, first of all, what was it like to leave the Achille Lauro incident and then go to the RAG? And then I have another part of that question that we'll get
Oh,
to
okay.
after that.
Well, after we got back from London, got back on the ship, we got back from London just in time to meet the ship in port and pulled out, and we still had a long deployment to go. So it's not like, waving the banners and hey, yeah, our job is done here. We've still got 6.5 more months at least of cruise left, which means going to the IO, in doing time down there, and they get emergency sorted back into the Med to do Libyan ops, which we did not participate in the El Dorado Canyon mission, but we did participate in. Um, we were the attack guys were sinking boats. I mean, there was a lot of fire going back and forth. Nobody ever shot any airplanes down, although there was a lot of opportunities to do that. But there were never any air-to-air weapons fired. There were a lot of air-to-air engagements from pretty much everybody in the squadron, but there was never any direct action that required or participated shooting anybody. But there were a lot of boats sank, and then we left going home, and then that's when El Dorado Canyon, the strikes into Libya, went down. So.
And so those interactions off Libya, what was it ROE dependent? Why, you guys were purely defensive ROE or?
Yeah, we couldn't fire unless fired upon.
Okay.
And if we were fired upon, then we had the right to chase them down, even though they were bugging out, because under the UN, we had the inherent right and obligation of self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
And because if we tried to disengage them, they would turn around and try to chase us down. So if they had ever started shooting, we had it clear delineated that we could shoot them as long as they were in the air. So.
Gotcha.
but it never happened. Even though they had the clearance to fire, we were never given a clearance to fire. So
Gotcha.
It almost sounds like that was a regret. You
yeah,
just
it was. You don't want to go out there and just shoot somebody for the will of it. But when they were maneuvering very aggressive for their airplanes, and they were trying their best to get into a firing solution on us, they just never were able to because they were not that good. Um, but they were trying their best to bait us into getting a shot on us, by all means. The Foxbats had engagements with the Foxbats, and they were flown aggressively as much as that airplane would allow. But when they were through with us, the Foxbat would just absolutely bug out uphill away from us and just outrun us. It was pretty impressive to see that airplane.
That's like the one
gosh.
airplane I know that could keep up with the SR-71 for a little bit, right? Like at least get somewhat close. So the
Yeah,
performance on
I
that thing's
got
pretty impressive.
saddled in behind two Foxbats, and they just lit the blowers, big giant engines, and they literally walked away from me as they climbed away.
Wow.
I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So
That's awesome.
I gotta have respect for what you can respect.
yeah,
That sounds, yeah, like an excellent remainder of deployment. Very, very different from the
yeah, it was
one.
it was a very exciting deployment. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it,
What was it like then to get back to the rag and then, to have a change of pace like that?
it was nice, and and once we got back from cruise, we didn't think much about what we did. That was just the way it was. That was our, we thought that was normal for everything. So we got back, and so I went to be rolled out of 103 into 101 as an instructor. Moved right into the CQ phase. And Will Curvon was in 103. We were roommates for two deployments. He rolls in about the same time I do as an instructor. So Wilbur rolls in the tactics phase. I'm in the CQ phase. And, it just continued. We ended up flying a lot together. We go to Top Gun together. We were going to do the demo team, but we got pulled off of that in order to go to Top Gun, which was a pretty good trade-off. So um, I liked my time at 101. I enjoyed waving. I enjoyed the time. Got to fly a lot. Got to meet a whole lot of nice, interesting people, and learned a lot about flying and fighting the airplane there too. So
Hi, everyone. Hate to break in. Stay tuned next week to pick up with more of Roe's history with VF 101, including his relationship with Joe Hoser Satrapa.